3, 2, 1.
This is The Jungle, an up-close, unvarnished look inside leadership and business strategy. We wade into the real-world leader's face and explore what they do to create a path forward, because that's what business is. Wild, exciting.
It's The Jungle.
Derek, we are back in the jungle. Whew! It has been quite a few weeks. We actually, in our previous, is it the previous episode, we had our Bronco-ness launch. Derek, is that correct?
Yeah. The Bronco-ness launch, we're 1 week in about. Sales are going great. A lot of alumni picking it up. And sales are great, but to see this impact of the student scholarships and the give back and see the students being empowered, how we do education differently, like here, run a brand when you come to Western. It's amazing to watch it unfold and how much coaching we get to do, which is a lot, but fun.
We had the Red Wings. The Red Wings coach was right after that. But since the Bronco-ness launch, for all the listeners, that press release that went a little bit viral. So we were on Reuters and Yahoo News and just getting picked up at affiliates all over the country on local news, and our students.
We were getting pinged like Dallas. Hey, you guys are just on Dallas Morning News. Someone in Dallas. I'm like, what? Dallas Morning News picked up. But I think we're onto something. A higher model of higher ed's kind of broken and it's in a bad spot right now, all over the place. Content's free everywhere. So what's the role of higher ed? And at some point, it's learning differently and doing things differently. And Bronco-ness was the first test in that. I love the label too. Shout out to Sylvan, our student who designed the label, and like the character and intention behind that label. So awesome.
And
awesome.
You think
if you're a Bronco alumni, you should want to copy that label, like on a hat or a shirt or on a piece of art hanging in your background. I'm gonna get one back there on behind me.
Well, it should be a point of pride for Broncos that, how many students can say they actually run a wine brand. And we had a great conversation with, someone very near and dear to us around our program who said, what a great experience for your students, because they could accelerate or actually kill a brand in real life. That the realness is of the initiative, I think, is what helps really give it that meaning, that sense of impact, increases learning. You don't see a lot of universities doing how the Bronco-ness project, how we're doing it, but I think that elevates the stakes in a way that you don't see other places.
So how much are you learning from all the stuff we're doing?
Oh,
every time we have a podcast guest, I'm mind blown. I get 10 pages of notes of stuff that I'm trying to take away and understand. And it's just been, and we're doing so much stuff that it's exciting, but it's learning a ton. And our students, I think, are growing and so fast. To see some of them 2 years ago and then see them today, it's a night and day difference.
We should make sure that for all the listeners out there, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. We have some phenomenal guests. We have some Fortune 500 CEOs coming down the pike, and tell some friends, tell some coworkers. We've had 5 Fortune 500 CEOs now, and just really great, really insightful guests in just all the different ways that leadership and strategy is getting impacted during the pandemic. So
that was a wonderful shameless plug, Doug.
We never do that. We should do that. Subscribe, hit the like button, tell some friends and coworkers, get the word out, help us impact more people.
And looking back around, a couple things. Bronco-ness will be in stores soon. Launch maybe this week, maybe next. So go pick it up at a store, order online from our partner St. Julian in this. It's been great. And then the new model of learning. I mean, our guest, it was awesome this week, this podcast.
Yeah. So
who do we have, Doug?
Yeah. So we had such a great conversation previously. We had to invite Thor back on as a podcast guest because we needed to keep talking to him. So we had Thor Flosason, and I practiced that, Derek, because I think he's from Iceland. But Thor Flosason, he is the Senior Director of Global Learning and Development at Kellogg. So a very interesting role, because he is now trying to develop about a 30,000 person organization globally at distance during a pandemic. And so you think about all the questions of, how do I onboard my employees? How do I get them to adapt to new skills? We're implementing this new software. How do I train them? Everyone's thinking about new skills, new capabilities, new ways of doing things. he's in a great role to share how you get your employees up to speed and to learn. And obviously we have some really great connections around his point of view of what learning is going to be like. What are the implications for higher education? So a really good conversation. What was your takeaway from our conversation with Thor?
So he was great. This was, we had a conversation about collaboration with him, and we were kind of awestruck, right? And I was like, wow, how many of our listeners need to hear about stuff like this that's so critical for today's virtual world? So we said, come on the podcast. We'll rehab this conversation on the podcast. And we did. And so my takeaway really was learning to learn is such a skill for our generation. The speed at what things change. And then when you get something like the pandemic that hit us, and you've got to relearn, unlearn, and learn new capabilities so fast, learning how to learn is critical. And we do this with our classes. Students get angry at us, but we create so much uncertainty in our learning model. It's like no syllabus, no directions, no memorization. Like, I'm going to throw a massive amount of uncertainty at you, and you have to learn how to learn to solve your issues. And that's going to help you more than me teaching you at a route memorization of something. So learning how to learn, he thought, was a critical skill. And I thought that was a huge takeaway. If you can teach people to learn how to learn quickly, fast, and adapt fast, but with those learnings and apply them, that's a underrated skill. What do you have, Doug? What was your takeaway?
Totally underrated, the learning how to learn. And the curiosity that you need to be able to do that. So for me, the 4 E's, you talked about 4 E's. I'll talk with, so education. How do people learn? What are the different modalities or experiences people can get to learning? One is formal education. One is education, but there's 3 other E's that we often as universities don't talk about: exposure, experiences, and environment. And when you start thinking about those 3 other E's, and we think about this somewhat in our program, probably should do better thinking about these factors. And he reframed it a little bit more for me, but how much you get in terms of your learning by just being exposed to new phenomena, to being tested in just totally uncertain, experiences or things you have to do. Just being able to test that water is a great way to learn. You don't need a classroom for that. You don't need a textbook for that. We talk about, on the experiences bucket, in some of our classes, we have students say, all right, well, you need to go off and contact your CEO if you're working in a company right now, and have a conversation with him or her. And for most students, they've never had a conversation with their CEO, never dared reach out. But that's a great learning experience. And to be able to have some of those experiences is where you're going to learn. So I love that model of education, exposure, experiences, and environment. As you think about guiding your employees on learning, maybe they don't just have to watch a bunch of videos. Maybe you need to be thinking about these other 3 E's to increase learning. So that was, I thought, really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that came from the great thinker in this field, Josh Bershon, right? He was using that framework, and Bershon by Deloitte has that whole new field on this. So shout out to them for being thought leaders in the area. And
we discussed even a T-shirt. Maybe a T-shirt will get made after this podcast, right? We'll put a big procedural knowledge. We can geek out with a big procedural knowledge, which for all the listeners out there is know how, and declarative knowledge is know that. And I think everybody kind of knows that in today's world, with information ubiquitous on your phone and everywhere, know that you don't need any skill for that. It's everywhere. It's free. And it's everywhere instantly all the time. Know how? That's something else. And I think we're big fans of procedural knowledge. So we need to get the big T-shirt on procedural knowledge. I think that would be maybe the most academic thing we've done lately, Derek, is get a big procedural knowledge T-shirt. So
we keep running away from who we are. It just keeps pulling us back in, right? There's like the academic conversations we get in.
Yep.
Although we're so not in that territory anymore, but
it's a great role to be sitting at this intersection of a university and business professionals, and that's where we love to play. So we hope everybody enjoys this conversation with Thor Flosason.
The Jungle is produced by the Center for Principled Leadership and Business Strategy in Western Michigan University's Hayworth College of Business. Our center supports the leadership and business strategy major conducts large-scale consulting projects, and trains professionals in acquiring and operating small businesses. To learn more, visit wmich.edu/leadership center.
Thor, welcome to the jungle.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Do you have a beverage with you today?
I do have a beverage. Yes, I do.
What are you drinking, Thor?
LaCroix, the flavored sparkling water, which I kind of like.
What flavor exactly? Because Doug's a big fan of this stuff.
It's cranberry.
Ooh, yum!
Got a fridge full of this stuff, so different flavors. So
well, cheers! Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, Derek. I got a new shipment of Rishi tea today. Shout out to Rishi tea again. I got some great English breakfast tea. I'm a huge. All the listeners know I'm a huge tea drinker, Thor. So always got to have a good tea on the podcast.
Deal.
So really appreciate you joining us. I thought at first maybe we could start off with, we've had a lot of executives and head coaches and, Congress people on the podcast. You're a little bit different. You're focused on learning and development. But we think this is a critical issue, both from a corporate perspective for our listeners, but also from higher education. Where that's our business, so to speak. Could you just start off maybe briefly just sharing like what your role is at Kellogg?
Absolutely. So my role is I'm a senior director of global L&D, and I sit within HR and more specifically within the group that handles talent management, leadership development, acquisition globally. So my role is specifically, having the right processes, technology, solutions in place for people to learn and grow at Kellogg. So I think that would be the simplest way of putting it, right? So what are the needs we have today and in the near future in terms of skills and capabilities? And how do we bridge the gaps we have with our people? How do we continuously allow them to grow and learn to better needs the needs of today and tomorrow? So it's a fun challenge to have, because with 30,000 employees plus around the world, how do you cater to all those different needs? No learners as alike; they all have different needs. How do we get to a scalable model for corporate learning that works for everybody? So interesting challenge to have, especially nowadays when we have a lot of cool technologies out there and better access to data.
We had, we invited Thor on the podcast, Derek, because we had a great conversation, a couple of weeks back, and we thought this is such a good conversation. We got to get you out there so our listeners can hear some of your insights. Maybe before we dive into, the stuff that you're doing right now around learning and development, what has the pandemic been like in terms of your role and how you are contributing or thinking about learning and development during this time where we're remote work and all of that with the pandemic?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I think the immediate things that comes to mind is the buzzword of the day, virtual, right? So we obviously had different avenues for learning, kind of in the traditional sense with courses and trainings and people getting together and collaborating and all that. That really got blown up with the pandemic. We didn't have the luxury of being in person and working through these learning solutions in person. So what we had to do is to quickly pivot to provide other avenues for learning. I mean, a lot of it is online, and we had a ton of stuff already available for people to learn. But some of the things and just some practical solutions we had to come up with, for example, how do we onboard new hires into the organization, right? I'm joining on my first day from my home, right? I'm not going to an office. I'm not going to see my manager. I'm going to have a call with them, or I'm going to see them on camera. But then how do we introduce the company to new hires? How do we get them excited about being here? And how do we educate them on who we are, what the brands are, how do we operate, what's the culture like? So what we had done is we really packaged that up in a virtual experience that goes beyond the first week. So I think a lot of the transition and the problems we had to solve was just how do we get people access to the right content in the right context using technology. So another thing, so this is just on delivery, right? But then on more strategically, the pandemic is requiring us to work differently and requiring new skills, right? You're not able to do things exactly the same like you did before. So it's also, we're seeing now some opportunities. How do we, everything from mental health and wellness, right? How do we equip managers to do that and do that well with their teams, just to foster the wellness mindset? And how do we continue to deliver without the ability to be with other people? So I think there's both the just the pure delivery of content and learning, but it's also what are the new skills that are coming out of this, and what are the gaps, right? And how long can we sustain this? How long can we have these conversations over Teams or Zoom or all that? Are we gonna? I mean, there's already talk of fatigue, so a lot of challenges and how we need to pivot, and we're still learning. Well, the last thing I will say on this question is that, as a learning professional, as an HR professional, we now have a unique opportunity we've never had before. We've had people question some of our approaches, say, hey, you can't do this over the internet. It's not effective. You need to hold people's hands to make them learn and all that. I've challenged that for a long time because, yes, there's value, there's incremental value in having people together. And a lot of that has to do with the social aspect of it and the engagement aspect of it, not necessarily learning, right? I can learn a lot of things without having people. So I think we're able now to challenge some of the assumptions, because we've gotten pushback from people over the years when I'm trying to sell in scalable virtual solution. Hey, we can reach everybody. You're not with the people in the same room. And I know, well, so you're always balancing scale and cost and those things. And this pandemic in a weird way gives us an opportunity to say, it's working. We haven't had an in-class session for months. Are we seeing any downside impact of that? Are we struggling because we haven't done that? No. Yeah. We've been able to bridge the gap. So some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. So let's tie our worlds together there. This is happening in higher education right now at a crisis level pace. How's that? The COVID has accelerated virtual, has accelerated how and where people learn and get things done to virtual. You mentioned something else earlier, is individualized path and different learning. So you want to scale virtually and then do individualized path. And then being in the classroom, what needs to be in the classroom, what needs to be in person in your case, and what can go virtual and not, you don't need a classroom for it anymore. So can you talk about where we are today, where we're going, and what it may come back to from your perspective?
Yeah, I think we're kind of exploring, we're learning, we're taking a lot of things and insights from what's going on, what's working, what's not. So I think will we go back to the classroom? Yes, absolutely. Will we do as much? I don't think so. I think when companies, and now I'm talking corporate, they're seeing there's a lot of actually cost savings, right? When it comes down to the bottom line, we can shave off some cost we can really accomplish this. One example, I'm involved in projects. I've been flying around the world and kicking things off with some immersion learning sessions. I thought never, I can never do this virtually. I actually can't because I don't have a choice. So we're testing those assumptions. So I think we're going to go back, but I think what we will continue is to rediscover or reinvent or innovate with how we can make this more sustaining. I think, one of the challenges for higher education and others is, should I be paying tens of thousands of dollars to go to a campus with all the facilities and be there? So I think there's now going to be a self-reflection, both from, academic, institutions as well as corporate, is, do we really need these corporate universities with big buildings and classrooms and all of this, huge staff, down to something where it's more, we're converting that and putting learning in the flow of work, right? So, and I'm talking obviously from my workplace learning, is it's not only kind of the course and program driven, it becomes more part of how we operate, how we collaborate, how we share, how we curate, how we facilitate and coach. So the role of the learner, role of the employee is different. We're not only consumers when it comes to learning. We're partners. We're collaborators. We're contributing to the learning process as an expert. So in some ways, you have that in through mentoring and coaching, and that may also be happening at the academic level, where you have students partnering, right? They're discovering, they're learning together without necessarily going to a class, but it might be in a context of a class. So a lot of this is kind of on the note of ongoing continuous learning. It's not driven by an event. It's not driven by a location or a particular person. It's more creating a community, creating an environment and an ecosystem where I can be self-sufficient. I need to learn this today. I know where to go for that. I'm going to call so-and-so. I'm going to look at this virtual asset. I'm going to, what is that? So I think the key for both, students and going through their college programs, whatever that might be, and employees for ongoing development, learning how to learn is a key competence or a key skill to have, right? If you can give people just the environment, they will figure it out if they have that basic skill. I think that's really, if I had one wish, if I had a genie in a bottle thing, and he would ask me what's my solve, make sure that everybody knows how to learn. So learning how to learn is
I want to jump all over this one.
I'm all over because you're right in our wheelhouse. So go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. So the learning how to learn philosophy. The notion of being resourceful, of being improvisational. Yeah. It seems like, I'm curious what you think. I mean, Derek and I have conversations about this all the time. I had a conversation about this actually this morning from someone at Kalamazoo College. How much of the educational experience we have at universities are so prepackaged, so they remove the need to learn how to learn because it's so circumscribed, it's prepackaged, it's straightforward, right? And there's a rubric and there's everything else, which is the opposite of how, in some ways, I'd be curious what you think of this idea of learning immersed into the actual experience in the flow of work. That's a totally different thing. And to your point, so I'm curious how you see that, and is higher education missing the boat on this one, or what do we maybe as higher education need to do to be able to deliver on this notion of being able to develop people who are learning how to learn?
And corporate education for that.
Yeah.
All education.
I think it's, when you sue, there are a lot of prerequisites that come in. Learning how to learn doesn't happen. You don't necessarily take a course on it, right? I would say, from just reflecting on my own kind of how I interact with the environment and how I learn, I think that is a lot of that came from actually going through that rubric, programmatic approach that I got from formal education. So you need that. At some point, you need that exposure to something that's linear and that's programmed, that I'm getting some foundational skills. But at some point, the opportunity opens up for you've mastered some of the fundamentals. You've mastered social skills, networking skills, reaching out to others. You've mastered some basic skills around seeking out and searching for content and consuming content when you need it. So I think we absolutely, when we go, we higher education and then we back up gradually. When you first start in kindergarten, you're learning the basics. You're learning the procedures and protocols, how you interact with others, all that. But then over time, there's going to be less of that, more academic stuff. And then at some point, you can probably do a lot on your own. When I look at my own career at Kellogg, I've had great opportunities. There's not a single leadership course or program or training course that I would attribute to where I'm at today. I've had things and insights that have helped me along the way. But the thing is, I think I've become quite savvy at, how do I learn and how do I grow and build my skills? And that's not through the formal channel. So the question is, and I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place. It's hard to say, let's scrap this and just go do something completely different. I think there has to be a balance of, there's formal. Does that have to be in the 13 or 16 week format? No, right? You're basically, if you need to fill a quota of delivering something over a certain period of time. But I think at some point you can probably break that mold a little bit and say, yes, we're going to have this foundation, but then you're going to have a little bit of freedom or a social network or something, projects and working with companies to actually, that's where the magic happens, right? There's a big gap, for example, when unless you've had great internships and stuff like that. And I struggled with this when I came from graduate school and into a corporate environment. There was a disconnect because I didn't have that ability at the time to be able to soak up how things worked and learning about the inner workings of the organization.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting challenge. It's yeah.
So how do you so this is at the programmatic level, right? There's decisions to be made, and those decisions impact every individual in terms of the empowerment they get. Yeah. Right? You are now responsible in this type of system you're talking about you're more responsible for your learning. right? In the process of work, in the process of things going on. So how do you wrestle with those decisions in corporate America, where we're a pandemic, all at home, and all of a sudden learning is not so programmatic, but it's all over the place?
Yeah. I think it goes back to kind of motivation and consequences. So it's why should I learn, right? I have so much, I mean, everything's changing. It's very complicated. I find it hard to operate in this environment. And the same, even when you go back to higher education, is, you're going, you're learning, you're completing the requirements because you're going to get a degree. There's a consequence. There is something to work towards. And same for corporate environment. I mean, in this pandemic and everything virtual, yeah, it might be hard for people to kind of reframe how they learn. At the end of the day, if I'm not seeing I'm not realizing the correlation or the relationship between intentionally learn something new and what that may give me. I mean, if people are not getting that, it's going to be hard for them to get in and be self-motivated and self-driven and be self-sufficient learners, right? There always has to be a value proposition in it for people, individually, right? Hey, I'm going to, learn how to do this Python programming because it's going to allow me to do X, Y, Z. It's going to open up doors. So some people need guidance on really understanding the why behind it, because learning is you're just not learning for the sake of learning. It has to be intentional, right? It's getting you closer to a goal, whether it's personal, professional, interpersonal, right? There are a lot of variables there. So I think if the whole concept around self-sufficient learners, people who learn how to learn, there has to be a motivation element somewhere. There has to be the why in it, right? The WIFM, the what's in it for me at some point.
Let's maybe talk a little bit about we talked a little bit of this in our previous conversation, what your perspective is on you've mentioned a few things on the future of learning and development. You've mentioned things like it's going to be inserted into the course of work. You've mentioned that maybe it's not going to happen on these offsites. Let's focus on the corporate side. What does corporate America get wrong about learning and development in your view, and where it should go into the future?
Yeah. I think we're, in many cases, we're stuck in a traditional approach to L&D, right? When I would ask the average employee, like, tell me about L&D, what is that about? Oh, it's about courses, and it's about going through these programs, and it's about, being invited to join a session and all of that. They may not, and I think, this is probably broadly corporate. I think some organizations realize it better, the value, right? The organizations that have really articulated the value and the value proposition of learning. But I think the average, it's like, oh, we just need to have something to keep people engaged. It's going to be, helping with retention because we're offering people this and that. But a lot of times it's not connected to the business strategy, right? Sometimes it's disconnected. Oh, we have this learning group or learning team and they're just cranking out stuff so people can do learning. But is that really related to the growth and the strategy of the company? Sometimes it's not. So I think it depends. Again, more progressive organizations, they're really deliberate about learning, right? They're thinking about innovation. They're thinking about putting it more, into the flow of work. But a lot of them are not there yet. I think what's happening with, we've for the last 20 years, they're all the speed of change. Everything is happening so quickly. And especially now when we're seeing like jobs are going to go away, they won't exist. What does that mean for a large number of people? You have to be able to pick up, learn new things, right? And I think a couple of large corporations out there, they've seen that when they have to lay off people because we're putting in an AI thing or something automated in place of that person, they're offering the person, hey, we're going to invest in you. We're going to allow you to learn this new skill that can get you into the next phase of your career. So it's really, you can see it all over the place with learning as a strategic asset and a strategic element of a company, of how they go about growing their people to have the right skills to deliver, versus it's an engagement retention tool. So I think you can see it. Yeah.
What are you thinking about, from where you sit at taking a huge organization like Kellogg? Where do you want to take it into the future? Where do you think the next step is in terms of how learning and development is going to get brought to life at a company like, the size and scale of Kellogg?
Yeah, I think it's all about getting. I mean, we've had some successes and wins in the past several years, and we've done a good job. But I think we need to get more embedded into where decisions are made within our senior leadership teams. Right, when we're talking about capabilities for the future, big opportunities, whether it's in the commercial space, whether it's around leadership capabilities, whether it's around change or digital. You know, what I would see us at Kellogg, and I've seen this other organizations, and we're brought in early. We're part of those conversations that happen when we're thinking about how do we equip the organizations to take off in a certain direction, right? Because there is typically a people piece there. And HR is oftentimes part of that, right? In terms of who do we hire to get us there? What's the type of data from people perspective? How do we do succession management to make sure we have all the right leaders? But there's always that skill building, capability building piece that has to be part of, like the strategic work at the top level, right? So I think that is when you say where do you see Kellogg? My hope is that I can influence and persuade to get us more into that space to do and even more value.
And you go ahead, Dirk.
So how does that scale? How do you scale across the organization with learning and development, and how do you curate knowledge and for the future? Like, I mean, that's one of the challenges is having a system that everybody can tap into all the time.
That's huge because we're tiny. I don't have a big team, right? I was a one-man show for a very long time. I do have supporting teams that build stuff for us, and we have great technology. The key is really it's I don't want to use it as a buzzword, but a learning culture where you are empowering the organization to own it. So it's been said that learning development is not the responsibility of HR or L&D. It's really something that is shared with the rest of the enterprise. So, and that's some of the things that I'm working on now. How do we give ownership and empowerment to different parts of the business? So non-L&D people are now part of that learning culture, whether it's through building and sharing content, driving programs, because it can never be successful if you're centralizing it to an ivory tower approach. Like, what does learning development say about this? I need my stuff from learning and development. Yes, they can do a lot of great things if we want to standardize and have certain consistent messaging and skills across the board. But it's not, and I think when last time we spoke, it's not one size fits all. It's one size fits one. So scale is going to be really difficult because you don't have thousands of people to do this for you. You need to work with the business, and you need to get their buy-in and participation in unlocking this by their active L&D kind of informal L&D roles. So, for example, I've worked quite a bit recently with different across the business on building their own stuff and deploying their own stuff versus I'm going to work with a vendor. I'm going to go to Thor and have them build. So that's bringing it closer to where the action happens. It's the ownership sits where it should be with the leaders and managers who are within those different pockets of the business.
So Thor, we have a lot of business leaders, senior folks that are thinking about listening to our podcast and trying to find actionable takeaways that they can put into play on a daily basis. If you thought maybe one or two examples, I know the psychological safety example you shared with us, that little micro learning was a great one. But do you have any really specific examples or tactics that you would suggest to leaders? If they want to start moving the needle on learning and development, maybe they have never even engaged on this, but they're thinking about things like onboarding people. They're thinking about, socializing folks into the organization. Do you have one or two kind of quick win tactics that you would recommend folks try to implement?
I think it's, asking the question is like looking at your business strategy. What do we need from a people perspective to make sure that takes off, right? And coming from that, what are the skill gaps and capability gaps we have from a people perspective? And then that would immediately help you to start to frame up, we need to either buy or build skills around these areas because we're not staffed or resourced to do that, right? And it's looking into the next 3 to 5 years. Do we have the skills to deliver in the future? So I think asking questions around what's needed to deliver, that it will ultimately get you down to the questions around people and what skills and competencies need to be kind of embedded within your organization. That's one. And obviously just leadership overall. I mean, you mentioned psychological safety. What are the critical leadership
Could you share
Yeah.
that? Could you share that little example that you had on this kind of micro learning burst you guys put together around psychological safety?
Yeah, so we're highlighting. I mean, we have at Kellogg, we have what we call our growth competencies, which is a set of 8 specific competencies. They're around leadership, right? Every skills and behaviors we expect everybody to have and work against to be able to deliver. And one of them is courage, right? Which being able to speak up and share your thoughts and opinions. And to be able to do that, you need psychological safety. And there's a lot of research out there when you look at effective teams. What's the one variable that is common across all teams that are effective? And you see things like trust and common vision and all that. But a sub element of that is really having psychological safety. I feel perfectly fine to speak up, to share my opinions, to share feedback within the team, with my manager and others around me. If you don't have that, it's going to be very hard to make progress and generate collective value from your teams. So psychological safety, we're kind of now using new kind of micro learning formats in short bursts of what we call now Take 10, because we're so used to having big courses. Oh, here's a topic. Let's put together a full day course or half day course. But when you think about it, there's I remember seeing something from a thought leader in the space several years ago. In every big course, there's a job aid crying to get out. Meaning there's always a gold nugget in any big course. You may not need the whole thing. So that's what we're trying to do is pull out what are the critical things, share that across the organization to allow people to reflect on a topic, learn about a topic, and then do something with it. Because the challenge for learning and development is, and I'm kind of reflecting, I should have mentioned there earlier when you talked about challenges and current environment, is so many programs are focused on the declarative knowledge. Declarative knowledge side. So knowing about, I understand this, I get this. That's a very different part from procedural knowledge, being able to do it, right? Because I can walk you through some coaching programs all day long and feedback programs all day long. You can recite it. You can get a 10 on my quiz, but then go coach this person. Oh, that's a whole nother thing, because learning development is ultimately about impacting and influencing and changing behavior, which is very, very difficult. You need all the right conditions for that. You need motivation, you need skills, so there are a whole lot of other things that go into it. So it's not a given to go from a declarative knowledge to procedural. Same for you guys when you're teaching guys, around business strategy and all that. You can talk theory and all that stuff. I'm like, get it. Now go out and work with a company and put together. Wow, that is a big challenge.
It's totally different. I want to get a T-shirt made around procedural learning now, Derek, because it is. I think so often we speak to universities go at this declarative piece, and they don't touch the procedural. And so we talk about in our program. It's one thing to know about courage. It's something else to become courageous.
Yep.
Those are two different things fundamentally.
Absolutely.
And I think and so often we teach to one and not the other. And I think it's a problem.
It's like I were to teach you guys how to swim via PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, you can understand the mechanics and how it works. You need to do this and that, but then I'm going to throw you into the pool and see if you do it. You're not going to be very successful. So that's an analogy, because so many things that hinge on being able to you need the declarative, you need to understand the basics, right? But if you're going to do something with it, if it's going to ultimately change how you interact with others, how you behave, and how you build skills, you're going to change the way you interact, not only what you think about. And because one big topic and what we're focusing on in Kellogg and is inclusion, diversity, equity, right? And a lot of people are aware of, okay, I kind of get what it is, but do I demonstrate inclusive behaviors in my interactions with others? Yeah. So that's another example where we need to nail both, right? We're changing culture. You won't change culture with just having people master some content. Won't happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's the difference of, the importance of diversity versus creating an environment that feels welcoming.
Absolutely.
Totally different things. Yeah. No. So Derek, do you have any other last questions before I go to rapid fire?
No, go to rapid fire. That was great. I like the procedural knowledge T-shirt though.
Yeah.
I'm already spinning around ideas on that. That's good.
Can I get one, please, if you do it?
Yes. Yeah. We'll put a swimmer on the back. No, I mean, I think we talk about learning by doing, Derek and I, that's our phrase. Our students talk a lot about it. Learning by doing, learning by failing. Like, you got to fall off the tree, and if you want to climb a tree, let's go try climbing. Let's sometimes, like, in some ways, let's not even go let's not even touch the declarative. Let's just go start climbing a tree. Let's see what works for you. Let's watch other people climb a tree. Let's watch some people succeed and some people fall off. You fall off. And then you figure out the way to get there versus let me tell you the theory of, let me tell you the physics of. By the time you get to, either you have to shorten the declarative piece and get quicker to the procedural, or you just drop the declarative and they almost like learn the declarative after the fact. One of our students, Amante Webb, shout out to Amante, said in our very first semester, experience is our best teacher.
There you go.
And I thought that was profound.
Yeah, and that's what we use and I didn't talk about this. We had kind of the model I have in my head, and we'll be communicating more and more. And I think I shared the last time is around the 4 E's, right? There are different learning contexts, right? There's education, like the formal stuff. There's experience, right? There's what we call exposure when you work with others, and it's mentoring and it's coaching relationship. And then these in the environment, right? Whether it's tools or other things that you figure out along the way. And failure is a huge learning tool, right? And we have one of our growth competencies at Kellogg is we call it Nimble Learning, right? So Nimble Learning is all about being able to learn and through successes and failures in equal measure. So it is allowing, when you said what the leaders need to do is allowing people to take risks, because we're going to learn through those. We're going to learn calculated risk, of course. But we're going to learn by mistakes, right? You just at some point, hey guys, here's some instructions, go and experience will be your best coach. Yeah.
The 4 E's. We could talk to you all day, Thor, because it's so fun. It's fun to talk to. These are really profound questions about, and because that's where higher ed's at. I mean, the board's been kind of flipped up. All the pieces on the game are flipped up, and it's like, okay, does it need to be 13 weeks or 16 weeks? Does it need to be in person? Is it online? If it, is it less? Is it, it's.
Is the best place to get the declarative knowledge in person or online?
Yeah.
What is a university? You're saying like work, learning in the flow of work, is the university that flow that's in the work? I think these are really interesting questions, and they can be had now. I think that's the opportunity of COVID, that you can really start to think about these things that need to get thought about.
Yeah, because we now our assumptions are being challenged, and we're saying like, well, we don't need this. We can do it this way. So I think we need to take that opportunity, and we have a unique opportunity to really do things differently and experiment.
Yeah.
Now I've great ideas for the future, and there's so much work to be done, and we've had some successes here and there at Kellogg, but this is a topic, learning in the workplace. It's not an easy one, right? We hire in capable people, but we need to ensure that we have workforce who can deliver on a continuous basis and really drive growth for the organization. So growing the organization, meaning that we need to grow the people. So those go hand in hand, right? Without people grow, the organization won't grow. So I'm never kind of satisfied, because there's always more, right? Then there's always, we have the tens of thousands of people, and you have challenges, and you have pushback, and you have politics, and how do you position this? Is this more important than other things? And I'm not at all, but it's very important that if we don't pay attention to it, if we don't pay attention to the skills we have, the skills we don't have, and how we bridge the gap, it can be a real struggle. And now with technology, we have great technologies, but they don't all speak to one another. So we're working through a lot of different things of, I sometimes feel my job title should be just problem solver, because that's what I do most of the time, is like figure out how do we fix stuff and get better.
That should be everyone's job title. It should all just be problem solvers.
Yeah. Well, I can't help. I need to ask this question. So how much of learning do you think, like, this would be like, okay, right before we have to go to break, so you get 30 seconds, Thor, but how much of learning is mimetic? It's just looking at what other people are doing and successfully copying before you get a handle on it, so you can kind of invent on your own. Like, how much do you think it actually, Derek and I have done a few things lately that I'm like, I don't know, never done this before. That you just kind of look out and you find some models, you kind of copy a few times, and you're like, okay, I get it. How much of learning is mimetic like that? It's copying, like.
I think a lot, right? And we just look at kids, right? They learn things, they pick up things from the environment by observing, then they try it out. Same for us, right? Probably not for, all skills, but there is definitely, things we take away A lot of things. I mean, I've learned so much from observing other people, like whether it's around presentations or interacting or influencing. There's definitely a lot of that happens. How much, I don't have a good answer on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. All right, so let's wrap up here with rapid fire questions. Ready to go, Thor?
Ready.
All right. Favorite leader?
Favorite leader? Good question. Gandhi.
Courage or compassion?
Compassion.
Speed or accuracy?
Speed.
Great ideas or great execution? Ooh, I'm excited about this one.
Great ideas.
Word to describe your leadership style?
Empathetic.
Are you a night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Favorite cereal?
Special K.
If you're in a dangerous jungle, so our students call our program the jungle because we put them into challenging situations. If you had a difficult task, it was a dangerous jungle, you're about to head in, who do you take with you?
My youngest brother, who's a firefighter.
There you go. If you had to take a product with you into this jungle, what would you take?
A product, like a food product or just any?
It could be anything you want.
Into the jungle. I would take a bag of seeds so I can grow stuff and sustain my, something to grow.
There you go. And then if you had an animal.
Wait. I have one. I have one first.
Okay.
In person or online?
Online.
Okay. That was a good one, Derek. That was very good. Okay. I got to keep going. Synchronous or asynchronous? Asynchronous. Okay. Very good. If you had an animal that really reflects your leadership, you got to pick an animal that really represented that. What would be your leadership animal?
An elephant.
And why is that?
Calm and composed, and takes kind of relaxed somehow. I don't know if that's an elephant, but it's like the easygoing, calm, sturdy.
And I don't elephants have wicked memories? I think that's also. Ooh. I think they do.
I'm not sure if I'm there, but maybe. I'll take that.
I'm going to look that up. Well, Thor, I really appreciate your time joining us on The Jungle. Always great to talk to you. Best of luck on all the exciting things that you guys are doing at Kellogg. It sounds like you're doing great stuff. So really appreciate it.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.